The Dallas Cowboys enter the league as an expansion team.
This is the story of a brand new team on the Texas scene, the Dallas Cowboys.
At the time, they didn't know it, but four men were about to change the course of NFL history. Clint Murchison, the Dallas Cowboys owner, known to many as a trickster, the innovative Tex Schramm, the team's manager, the brilliant Gil Brandt, who oversaw player personnel, and a young football savant from the New York Football Giants, Tom Landry. These four legends took a newly formed mediocre football team and revolutionized the league within a span of a decade. Although Dallas didn't have a great start, by the mid-60s, legends like Don Meredith, Bobby Hayes, Bob Lilly, and the Doomsday Defense steamed rode through the league, setting the tone for dominance during one of the most important decades in NFL history.
In 1964, the Dallas Cowboys continued their upward climb in the NFL's Eastern Division.
In a decade that saw professional football ratings rise to historical numbers.
You probably remember a great many sports events. However, I doubt that anything was more important than the establishment of the American Football League.
Innovative football and classic rivalries made the Cowboys one of the most watched franchises in the league of legendary competition. By the turn of the decade, the Cowboys had the star players.
Versatile Mel Renfro, number 20.
The genius coach, dazzling cheerleaders, and the beautifully new football wonder of a stadium.
Texas Stadium, a jewel mounted in the flatlands of Dallas, was the finest football facility in the world and the new home of the Cowboys.
Yet, they still could not get over the hump.
They say the Cowboys cannot win the big one. Dallas should have been well ahead.
And were considered to be the league's next year wonders. But it wasn't until a Navy kid came on the scene with an unconventional football style that Dallas was able to finally win the big one. In 1971, Roger the Dodger mystified millions of people with his comic book quickness and mobility. He brought magic to the Cowboys Stadium that left people in awe. In 1971, he had a year for the ages and catapulted the once underachievement franchise into champions. The new success heralded the Cowboys as America's darlings.
Roger, you have an all-American image. You're kind of a straight guy. Do you enjoy it, or is it a burden?
Not yet America's team, though. But by 1974, the magic had faded and the stars had lost their glow.
For an unprecedented 8 straight years, Dallas reached the championship playoff, and so did Cowboy fortunes in 1974.
They started the season 1-4, and for the first time in almost a decade, the franchise that created the Doomsday Defense was doomed to make the playoffs.
Many people predicted this would be the year the Dallas Cowboys would collapse. The reasons given were the defection to the WFL had crumbled their morale, and that Dallas was too long in the tooth, too old in key positions.
They won 7 of their last 9 games, but it was too late. The Cowboys' defense was good, but not Landry's type of good. They were tied for 5th in the league in passing touchdowns allowed. What's interesting is that the Cowboys' defense was only giving up 151.4 passing yards per game, which was in the middle of the league. So it wasn't like teams were throwing for a lot of yards. The issue was that teams were far too efficient against Landry's passing defense. And I'm being generous. Quarterbacks were averaging a passer rating of 74.6, which was 4th in the league against Landry's defense. They had the 3rd least interceptions in the league. As I was researching the numbers, it didn't make sense. How were offenses this efficient, yet they only completed 51% of their throws against the Cowboys? They were 10th in the league in completion percentages on defense. Teams attempted over 349 passing attempts, which was the 9th lowest in the league. Look at their completions allowed. They were just 7th in the league in completions allowed. Teams weren't completing a lot of passes. This data clearly shows that passing efficiency wasn't coming from normal passes between the numbers. So where was this 74.6 efficiency coming from? I dug deeper and finally found the answer. They gave up the 5th most yards per attempt. They were tied 3rd in the league in yards per reception. The answer was clear. Passing efficiency came on long passes down the field. Keep in mind, in the 70s, they didn't have air yard matrix or advanced data to calculate how far a team threw the ball in deep detail, but they did have yards per attempt and yards per reception. That's our clue, yards per attempt and yards per reception. Dallas was one of the most horrible teams in football against the deep pass. And to prove this even further, I researched every passing touchdown that the Cowboys defense allowed that year. 10 of those passing touchdowns went for 14 yards out or longer. 6 of them were 19 yards or longer. That means that 58% of touchdown passes that offenses caught on the Cowboys defense were long to intermediate touchdowns. Landry still got after the quarterback with 37 sacks, but because Landry played an aggressive man coverage concept on defense, he wasn't allowed to do what he wanted to do without paying for it on the back end. Meanwhile, Cowboys offense struggled mightily in 74. They threw for a ton of yards and still took care of the ball, but Staubach was uncharacteristically inefficient. He only completed 52.8% of his passes.
Picked off by Randy Logan. I don't believe it. Not a ball that could have been thrown. If he did anything, he should eat the ball or just throw it way out of bounds on this one. He took a big chance, the big gamble here.
Was at the bottom of the league in touchdown percentages and had a 13th league-ranked passer rating of 68.4%. Keep in mind, this is the best passer rating quarterback ever. Outside of 74, Staubach only played in 2 seasons. He played a few games in 72 before getting hurt, but that's it. In 71 and in 73, the only 2 seasons where he really played football, he led the league in passer rating with an average rating of 100%. So what happened? Well, like this entire video, the answer is complicated and will make perfect sense after I explain it. In 1974, as we saw earlier, Staubach only completed 52.8% of his passes. This, along with his low touchdown percentage, drove his passer rating numbers down. Staubach wasn't seeing the field. Initially, I thought the reason for this was because he got sacked so many times. When a player starts to get sacked a lot of times, they begin to rush their throws. But that wasn't true. Not in this situation. At least the numbers doesn't confirm it. Just a year prior, Staubach was sacked the 2nd most time in the league, yet he led the league in passer rating and was 2nd in the league in completion percentages. In 1971, he had the 3rd most sacks than anyone in the league with fewer than 250 attempts. Staubach was a scrambler, so initially he got sacked a lot of times. The issue with Staubach's performance was he just wasn't efficient. Well, let's prove this fact even further. In 1974, Dallas played the Vikings. He had a horrible game. Although he was only sacked twice, he only completed 9 passes out of 20 attempts. He had 4 interceptions with a low 63.3 passer rating. So if it's not sacks that caused Staubach to be so inefficient, especially against the Vikings, where he played one of his most horrible games of his career, what or who was it? In order for us to ask that question, let's take a look back. Neil Armstrong is football royalty, whose career spanned more than 4 decades at both the college and professional levels. In 1970, Armstrong was hired as an assistant coach with the Minnesota Vikings under the tutelage of legendary defensive coordinator Bob Holloway. He played a huge part in developing one of the most dominant defensive units in NFL history.
Let's go defense! Hurts a little, huh?
A year after he got the start, he changed the Vikings defense into a bend but don't break concept. This concept unleashed what was already a monster front four, the Purple People Eaters, to harass quarterbacks all over the league. A line made up of legendary mythical players.
Tell us a little bit about this Viking team. Last week against Washington, you had a bad first half, and they tell us that Carl Eller had to come in and pick you guys up at halftime. You didn't need any of that incentive today, did you, Jake Jeff?
No, we didn't. We knew exactly what we had to do today. We had to play the defensive line had to play an extremely aggressive defensive game, and we knew that we were going to have to play on their side of the line of scrimmage.
Alan Page, Jim Marshall, Earl Eller, and Doug Sutherland, however good they might have been, the key to their success wasn't the defense. I know that sounds strange. It was the offense. Whenever a team runs a bend but don't break concept, you want your offense to put up points. Because that means as a defense, the opposing offense has to pass the ball in order to keep up with the opponent. Of course, it's a plus when you have a dominant pass rush. It definitely was a nightmare in the 70s for teams that played the Vikings. But in the 70s, teams weren't built to pass the ball on short routes. Third downs became long and distant, and that's when pressure caused havoc. The bend but don't break concept took away the strength of the passing offense, which was deep passes. Take a look at this number. In 2024, the league averaged 10.9 yards per reception. In 1974, the league averaged 12.4 receptions. As you can see, the league threw more passes down the field in the 70s than they do in modern age football, which is astounding. That's why 9 of the 10 quarterbacks in completion percentages in history are currently playing football. Because quarterbacks today are throwing more short to intermediate passes than ever in history, including shorter passes in the 80s West Coast offense. Look at this stat. This is fascinating. In 1987, which was Montana's most explosive season, his receivers averaged 11.5 yards per catch, which was ranked 23rd at the bottom of the league. But if you look at the data in 2024, if Montana played in today's league, his 11.5 yards per reception ranking would have been 14th in the league. That's the difference. The data was around the same in 1974. This is another unbelievable stat. I researched every receiver whose career started from the year 2000 up to 2024 and measured out their yards per reception. Here's the list. Devery Henderson has the most yards per reception since 2000. But I didn't stop there. I went even further. This time, I researched every receiver's yards per reception in the history of the NFL. And you wouldn't believe where Henderson is ranked. He's ranked 33rd in history. The leading receiver in yards per reception in the last 24 years is ranked 33rd in the history of football. If that doesn't explain to you the league changes over the years, I'm not sure what will. Because of these long receiver patterns, there was no third down offenses who were dedicated to picking up first downs. But an offensive genius was about to change the course of the league forever. Landry's two secret weapons was a Pittsburgh underrated athlete and an old offensive formation that had been hidden in the dusty pages of NFL lore. Yet still, no offense in the world would matter if Landry couldn't reform his defense that had struggled severely in 1974. In 1974, Chuck Foreman and the Vikings rushing attack had a combined 111 rushing yards. It was the fifth worst rushing performance of the season. The concept that the Vikings ran on offense wasn't an unknown concept to Landry. It was the same concept that Vince Lombardi ran in the 60s.
Well, they try to run this play in the alley.
Jerry Burns, the Vikings offensive coordinator, was the defensive backs coach with the Packers in 1966 and in 1967. When the Vikings hired him in 68, he brought Lombardi's run-to-daylight concept with him. Although Landry had already built a concept on defense that challenged that offensive philosophy back in the 60s called the flex defense, Landry lacked the players to fundamentally be successful as previous generations.
Many people predicted this would be the year the Dallas Cowboys would collapse. The reasons given were the defection to the WFL had crumbled their morale and that Dallas was too long in the tooth and too old in key positions.
They had either retired or was now old veterans on their last legs. That was until 1975 when Landry and the Cowboys front office put together the greatest draft ever. They called it the Dirty Dozen Draft. Believe it or not, before the 1970 draft, the Cowboys weren't a great drafting team when it came to retaining their draft picks. Dallas never kept more than 9 draft choices in a single year. Typically, Landry and the Cowboys front office would keep 6 draft picks per season, but that changed in 1975. In 1975, 11 picks and 1 undrafted free agent made the team. From that statistic, the name The Dirty Dozen was coined for the 1975 Dallas Cowboys draft class.
Emotional factor that the rookies bring into the game, the unpredictable thing that they have. I knew that if we had that going for us, the determination, the intensity, that we can beat anybody. The youth, the mix of the youth and the age on our team it's just been super. Our organization, they're smart. They know what they're doing.
Herbert Scott, Randy White, Thomas Hollywood Henderson, Bob Brunick, Pat Donovan, Randy Hughes, and Scott Laylaw. Each of these guys played a huge part in the transformation of the team on both sides of the ball. But in order for us to understand what Landry was putting together on offense and defense, we have to go back 2 years before the NFC divisional game. In 1973, Dallas drafted a young phenom who immediately set a tone for Landry's defense that saw a surge of sacks that year.
There was something old and something new on defense. The new was Harvey Martin, number 79, a fast-pursuing, head-hunting defensive end from East Texas State.
When they drafted Harvey Martin, they jumped from 11th to 6th. Martin was tied for the most sacks as a rookie in Cowboys history. Dallas' defense was 5th in the league that season. It was also the first season Staubach played in since his historical Super Bowl run back in 1971.
Staubach possesses quick feet, a stutter-stepping stride, and sure vision in the open field.
Staubach had a dominant year. He was 5th in yards and tied for the league lead in passing touchdowns.
Staubach's knack for turning certain disaster into big gains was a big reason why the Cowboys averaged an incredible 30 points over the first 7 games.
Landry thought that he had a team that could compete for another Super Bowl, and in all honesty, he did, until they met the Vikings. In 1973, Dallas had the third best rushing defense in football, but they only played 3 top teams in rushing yards: the Rams, the Dolphins, and the Bengals. They were 1-2 in those games. Uncharacteristically, the run game was a weakness in Landry's arsenal that was ready to be exposed. Dallas was tested again against the Rams during the divisional round of the playoffs, but they passed with flying colors.
With it 3rd and 14 from his 17-yard line and the game in the balance, Roger Staubach threw up a pass and a prayer. Both were answered by Drew Pearson.
But the next week, their luck ran out in the NFC Championship game. Chuck Foreman and Oscar Reed ran all over the Cowboys' third-ranked defense. They alone had 151 rushing yards. Combined as a team total, the Vikings had over 203 rushing yards on the third-ranked rushing defense in the league. It was the most rushing yards that Dallas had ever given up in the playoffs.
Foreman, he's got it. Yep.
Well, Minnesota, you really can't take too much away from the job, but they've done, particularly running against the Dallas defense that over the years has been very difficult to run against. They've done a great job of controlling Leroy Jordan in the middle. Mick Tingeloff has done a spectacular job in executing those blocks up the middle, and they've just dominated the game, quite frankly.
The game, 2nd and 6 for Minnesota, and Foreman has to go very deep, trying to turn the corner. Darkened into Foreman, following Reed.
Landry's legendary flex run defense wasn't as good as it used to be. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ball, Neil Armstrong's defense dominated the Cowboys. That bend but don't break scheme confused and frustrated Staubach all day, like it had done the last game they played. Staubach had his worst playoff performance of his career. He threw for 4 interceptions and had 0 touchdowns. He had an horrific passer rating of 19 points. At the time, a lot of teams didn't have offenses who methodically moved the ball down the field like a West Coast concept. Staubach was 9th in the league in yards per attempt, so a chunk of their concept was passes that stretched the field.
3rd and 10. Sideline overthrown, incomplete, and Dallas will have to punt.
But to give you a sense of what happened that game, I highlighted all of the third down conversions that Dallas faced that were 7 yards or more. I also highlighted long passes complete or that were incomplete. The results were horrible. On third down passing plays that had a 7-yard or more conversion rate, Staubach was 1 out of 6. On long passes complete or incomplete, Staubach was just 2 out of 11. He threw a deep bomb on third down that was intercepted. He had a long pass picked off in the 4th quarter. He also threw a pick 6. Again, this was Staubach's worst performance of his career, and it came against the bend but don't break Vikings defense.
Excuse me, Jack. On the other side of the fence, Staubach has not been very sharp at all. His passing has been off. The whole rhythm of the Dallas offense has been off considerably.
So after that game, Landry had 3 issues going on. 1. Staubach wasn't good on third downs, especially against the Vikings. Landry was aggressive that season down the field, so Staubach would force passes that ended up being intercepted. Being under center on third downs also made it difficult for Staubach to read defenses. To be honest, that's why he had bad completion percentages. 2. Landry's defense struggled to stop the run versus top rushing offenses.
Foreman, he's got it. Yep.
It's hard to think of that about Landry's defense, but it's true. 3. From 1973 to 1974, the one team that gave Landry problems in the NFC was the Vikings.
Coach Tom Landry here, who saw all his hard work and planning and dedication end here today, and just kind of a tough moment, Tom.
Well, it really is, but, Minnesota played an excellent football game. They came prepared, and they whipped us. They were doing a super job the first half, both defensively and offensively, and we couldn't stop them defensively, and we couldn't move against them offensively.
The Vikings won the NFC Championship 2 seasons in a row. Dallas were 0-2 in that time span versus the Vikings. 0-2.
And the Vikings are the champions of the National Football Conference. 2 seconds, 1 second, it's all over.
The defense gave up a total of 314 yards in 2 games. Their offense scored a combined 50 points. Staubach threw 8 combined interceptions in 2 games. He had 10 total turnovers. 10 turnovers in 2 games versus the Vikings. But here's even a more telling stat. Cowboys running backs in those two games had a combined 8 receptions for 52 yards. That's an important stat as we go forward. One thing that made Landry an icon was how he viewed defeat. Most coaches looked at defeat and only saw losses. Landry saw victories. Going into that 75 season, he understood his team's weaknesses. Dallas needed to stop getting gashed on the left side of their defense versus the Vikings. That was their weakness. Staubach was getting a reputation that he couldn't read defenses, and Dallas was horrible on third downs. All of these issues came out mainly versus the Vikings. The Vikings was public enemy number 1. And from 1973 to 1975, if you wanted to make it to the NFC Championship game, all roads led through the Vikings.
Metropolitan Stadium, the first round of the NFC playoffs in 1974, and the Vikings proved to be a big winner.
So what did Landry do to answer these issues? For one, in 1974, Dallas drafted a phenom from HBCU college with their first pick of the draft. His name was Too Tall Jones. Listen to what he has to say, and we'll get back to the video.
I tell you, it's a wonderful feeling. When I first heard the rumors at the beginning of the year, I tried not to pay any attention to it, but I find myself thinking, what would it be like to be the number 1 pick? And here I am, and it's unbelievable. Watched the Minnesota game, and they all look good, but I think I can start. I don't know where, but I think I can start here.
When they came and got us to get on the bus, 2 people sitting on the bus, Coach Landry and his wife, Alicia. And I'm going, oh no, what am I going to say to this man who just lost? I kid you not. I walk on the bus and I was introduced to him. He said, now you're going to have to watch that cutback play that they were running on you yesterday in the game. Otherwise they're going to get your legs. I'm speechless. I'm going, they just lost this championship game. And he reminded me of what I have to watch out for. But I can't believe he even watched that East West Shrine game. So it just blew me away. I just dribble out, sorry about the loss, but boy, that you all played well, something like that, and went straight to the back of the bus.
Did you hear that? The Cowboys had just lost the championship game to the Vikings, yet Landry was focused on one thing: Jones's run defense in the East-West Shrine game. What was Landry up to? Because he was up to something. That statement was no casual statement. Keep in mind, he said that on the same day that the Cowboys gave up the most yards on the ground in franchise history. But you see, Landry had already knew that Jones was going to be an intricate part in the franchise's future. Too Tall Jones was drafted as the number 1 overall pick in 1974. He was projected to be a right-end pass rusher by the media and some scouting coaches, while Harvey Martin played left end. By the time the 4th game of the season, Landry moved Jones to the left side to test him in the run game and made Martin the main starter on the right side. Well, guess who was the team that the Cowboys played against in Week 4 in 1974? The Vikings. Landry used Jones and Martin as a testing rat in a science lab. Well, it still didn't work out that game. The next year in 1975, Martin and Jones was a deadly combination. James became one of the best run stoppers in football and an anchor on Landry's defense that he had never seen, particularly against the run, although he was good against the pass as well. While Martin was a menace against the pass and a good player versus the run. The two complemented each other on levels we have never seen before. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ball, before the start of the 1975 season, rumors were still out that Staubach couldn't see the field properly on third downs. The mad scientist went into the dusty playbooks of years past and activated an old offensive formation that most teams in the league had forgotten about, the shotgun offense.
The biggest advantage of the shotgun is getting back deep in a shorter period of time and the ability to see defenses for a longer period of time. You put more burden on the rush. You're back deeper, and the other thing is for a quarterback, as far as myself, more mobility. I can move around more because I'm back there quicker.
But in order for this shotgun spread to work, he didn't just need Staubach. He needed a third down shotgun specialist, and he found him on the sidelines of a future foe. Pearson was an athletic freak who was good in both basketball and football. Landry used him at every skill position on the field. Wide receiver, running back, fullback, on the line of scrimmage as a tight end. He was Landry's experiment. But it was the shotgun on third downs or just third down packages period where he made his mark in history. Pearson defined the position of third down back, forcing defenses to use nickel schemes to assign a cornerback to cover him.
Now, here's that option play that they ran against the 49ers, and it's short of a first down.
Or to double team him. The shotgun allows Staubach to see the field better and read his environment. Drew Pearson was another dominant piece of the puzzle in the shotgun as well, because of his ability to stretch the field.
Good line, right back in. Does that show you those Terry's going to go back across the middle?
If we look at his 800 receiving yards in 1975, most modern fans would say, what kind of a season was that? But if you measure Pearson's numbers with his own peers of his time, then there's a different story. Pearson was 5th in the league in receiving yards. He was 10th in yards per reception and tied for 6th in touchdowns. The shotgun spread does not work without an elite receiver. This is how good Pearson was that season. If you count his receptions in 75, he was ranked 11th in the league among wide receivers, yet he was still 5th in receiving yards. So, I researched the top 46 receivers in receptions that season to find where the opposite receiver of Pearson ranked in receptions. The next receiver on the Dallas Cowboys in reception was Golden Richards. Guess where he ranked out of those 46 receivers? Dead last, which also means that Pearson dominated against double teams more than any other receiver in the league. Wow, very impressive. Take a look at these stats. Staubach was 14th in the league in completion percentage in 1974. But once the shotgun arrived, he moved from 14th to the top 6 in completion percentages. His sack total decreased by 9 sacks, mainly because he could now see the pressure and the alignment of the defense better. Landry, in a matter of 2 years, turned his team's weaknesses into strengths. And for the first time in a long time, Landry had an athletic, powerful defense to answer every defensive issue. Keep in mind that 1975 was also the first year that Landry paired Charlie Waters and Cliff Hurst up together in the backfield, creating arguably the best backfield of the decade. What this did was allow Waters to play near the line of scrimmage, crowding the box in 8-man concepts, while Hurst feasted off quarterbacks' rush throws from that newly renovated front four pass rush. What the four horsemen, Murchison, Schramm, Brandt, and Landry did from 1973 to 1975 was one of the greatest work of player personnel and coaching in the history of the league. Meanwhile, once the season started in 1975, the Vikings were cruising along like they've done in the 2 seasons before. But what they were unaware of was that the Cowboys were planning their revenge tour and reconstructing their team in ways that no one seen coming.
The Dallas Cowboys could be considered in one aspect as a minor miracle of 1975. They lost an awful lot of key personnel last year, and a lot of people didn't think they'd get this far. But what we forget about the Dallas Cowboys sometimes is that they have probably one of the finest organizations in all of professional sport. Since they were founded in 1960, they have had only one owner, one director of personnel, one general manager, and one coach. And that consistency and knowledge has brought them to where they are today.
The 1975 NFC divisional game was one of the coldest playoff games the Cowboys ever played in. It was 25 degrees at kickoff. There was a 17 chill wind factor.
The weather really is about 28 degrees, and as you said, it's a heat problem right now.
Dallas started the game as underdogs. They had 18 men on the roster who had never played in a playoff game before, and other players who were 2 or 3 year starters.
John, we've talked about playoff experience. The Cowboys have 18 men who have never been in a playoff before.
Landry's game plan early on was to run at the Vikings' bend but don't break defense. Because of the Vikings' strong front four, that wasn't going to be an easy task. But Landry was persistent. He ran 6 straight runs out of the gate. After the assault on the ground, he ran a beautiful screenplay to Newhouse.
Go. Staubach. Complete to Newhouse. To the 40, the 45, 50. He's in the Viking territory, and flags are thrown at the 49-yard line.
But it was called back because of a clipping. Yet, you can see what Landry was trying to do. Runs and screens are deadly to a bend but don't break defense. The penalty forced Dallas into a 3rd and long. And that is when Landry brought out the infamous shotgun spread. The most dangerous player on the field on 3rd downs was called on.
You can draw the linebackers up a little bit tighter. Charles Young down the backfield. Preston Pearson in motion. 3rd down, 10. Wide open. And Pearson is across the 40.
Because of the linebackers and safeties playing so deep, Landry sends Pearson into motion on an out route under the defense. If you look at Staubach, he's surveying the field. That's what the shotgun gave him the ability to do, and that was what was different from years past. But this was a game of chess. The Vikings weren't a two-time NFC champion for no reason, and they weren't about to lay down. Not now. The next time Dallas went to their shotgun on third down, the Vikings were waiting.
They figure they can blow him out if they go straight stuff right at him. 3rd and 7, the shotgun for the first time. Staubach and Will Pearson, the intended receiver at the 30-yard line.
The first series on defense was just spectacular. Dallas' defense was so explosive. The Vikings thought that this was 1974. And much like Dallas did earlier, the Vikings tried to establish their own run game on Too Tall Jones' side.
They closed the gap real good. Too Tall Jones, number 72, came down and really closed the hole up.
Bad move. Dallas' run defense was phenomenal early on. But it wasn't just the run defense. The pass defense was dominant as well. So far, Landry's defense renovations was paying off. But so many times in playoff situations, one mistake can change the course of momentum. Dallas' defense forced the Vikings to punt again, and as Cliff Harris waited on the punt, he mismanaged the ball. The ball ended up hitting a Dallas Cowboys player number 67. After muffing the punt, the Vikings gained possession on the 4-yard line, and Foreman will later score a touchdown.
Trying to drive in, and in for the touchdown.
The Vikings were up 7 at this point. It was now minutes before halftime, and the Cowboys had yet to score a single point. The only time the offense was in the Vikings' territory, they missed a field goal. The defense was brilliant, but the offense had stalled, especially on third downs. The very down that Landry put so much work in to be successful at. It seemed like the Vikings had exposed Landry's shotgun offense. After that punt recovery, one thing was evident. Momentum had changed, but all it took was a legend to recapture it.
Man target, got lots of protection. Jim Lash overthrown and Mel Renfro's got it.
Tarkenton threw a pass on the sidelines and Renfro made a beautiful interception. Coming into the game, the Vikings made sure that Pearson was not going to beat them on deep passes. Someone else had to come through, and that someone else was the receiver, who was 46 in the league in receptions among wide receivers that year, the legendary Golden Richards. On third down, Staubach went into the shotgun and threw a dagger to Richards.
It's complete.
Momentum was on the Cowboys side, until it wasn't. The Vikings defense somehow did it again. They stopped the Cowboys on 4th and inches in their own territory.
They have Young, Pearson, and Dennison in the I backfield. Now they split it. Oh, hit is Dennison. And he's not going to get it. What a defensive effort by the Vikings, particularly.
And just like that, momentum had returned to the Vikings. At this point, this was becoming an instant classic. Momentum changes almost on every other drive. Dallas' run defense was so dominant that the Vikings completely abandoned their run game, a complete difference from the last 2 seasons. Dallas forced the Vikings to go 3 and out, and Landry's scheme was showing signs of success, at least on defense in the first half. For the first time since 1969, the Cowboys was held scoreless in the first half during a divisional round game. But sometimes, it takes a legend to put the game on his shoulders. Staubach went into GOAT mode in the first drive of the second half of the Cowboys.
That's all there's to it. 3rd and 3 for the 35. Play action by Staubach. Look out, here's Eller. He completes it to Preston Pearson, and Pearson has the first down, but Staubach, as you mentioned, Gene Fugit in motion. A first down. Tarkenton, complete to the 25. Billy Joe Dupree to the 20-yard line. In a Newhouse, the running back. Roger, almost the yard line. Dennison to the 10. Dennison. I give to Dennison, and he is very close. He's in.
Landry's defense was absolutely destroying Jerry Burns' offense. Not only did Dallas' defense take out the 5th best back in football, they completely shut down the 3rd best passing offense in football and the reigning 1975 league MVP, Fran Tarkenton. Even a young legend got into the action on a critical 3rd down.
And he's down at the 23, Ed Jones and Randy White. They have White in there now in place of Harvey Martin. Randy White, I don't think they really know how good he's going to be. He's going to play somewhere. He's going to be a terrific football player. He's out of University of Maryland, and here we are.
Dallas was on fire, and Staubach was in a groove.
On the Fugit, 2 tight ends. Play action by Staubach. He's going to run for it. Dugan. Saba. And he's got a first down up. Saba to Newhouse to the 20. And Newhouse to the 17-yard line.
On third down, he hit Pearson on a dagger out of the shotgun.
Third down. Preston Pearson, and he made a flying catch. He's going to be short, however, I believe, of that first down.
My goodness, that was an amazing catch. Dallas ended up kicking a critical field goal. And at the top of the fourth quarter, Dallas was leading 10-7. Landry called for a shotgun and went to put the game out of reach.
Now the running backfield, a third down after that 5-yard illegal procedure. 3rd and 11. Roger going deep to Golden Richards. Roger unloads the football, and let's watch Richards as he just outdistanced number 20, Bobby Bryant. Right there, the ball should be caught.
Had Richards caught that pass, he's probably gone for a touchdown. Dallas would be up by 10 points, and I think that the game would have been over. That touchdown would have been demoralizing to the Vikings. But there's a reason why you never let champions stick around. On the ensuing drive, the Vikings put together a long, methodical scoring drive and took back the league in dominant fashion.
For some points. Brad giving up. McClanahan, and he's in.
The score was now 14-10. Momentum was again now on the side of the Vikings. The Vikings were just a few minutes away from being the first NFC team to play in the NFC Championship 3 seasons in a row. The shotgun offense was failing badly at this point. I'm sure fans were screaming at the TV, "Get out of the shotgun." And what made matters worse was the Vikings was now starting to pick up momentum on the ground even more. You gotta understand, if they score in this drive with just under 3 minutes to go, the game is practically over. If there was ever a time when the new Doomsday defense could make a name for themselves, the time was now. The days of riding the coattails of Doomsday teams of old stopped right now. There was no more Bob Lilly. Although the great Leroy Jordan was still there, he was late in his career. But there was a problem. It's 3rd and 2. The Vikings was the best third down offense in the league. The chips was on the line. If the Vikings get the first down, they probably end up wasting out the clock, forcing Dallas to use all of their timeouts. I couldn't imagine how this would feel had I watched this live. So those who lived this out in real time as fans, what were you thinking? Were you nervous or confident? Do you still remember this game? Every team has legends, but in 1975, the Cowboys had legends all over their roster. One of them was the legendary Charlie Waters, who just this season made the roster as the starting strong safety. This move by Landry played out to be critical, that literally saved the season. Because watch what's about to happen.
3rd down, 2. McClanahan in motion. Fran, a little bit of trouble. Charlie Waters has got him. And you saw Fran hanging onto that ball.
Did you see that? We talk about a few plays in this classic matchup, but we very seldom talk about this one. Just one arm saved the game. Look at that space. That's an easy first down. Waters' original man is this guy. Waters went straight after Tarkenton forcing the 4th down. And it was this time that Doomsday 2 was born. The defense did their job. It was time for the offense to now step up and be legends. What made Roger Staubach a legend? It wasn't his groovy moves or his prestigious accuracy. Those were a part of it, but it wasn't the main reason. It wasn't just the fact that he was a great guy, a moral compass that children could actually follow, something that was rare as an athlete and still is. No. What made him a legend is that he was dependable and had a clutch gene that rivaled anyone in sports history. When defeat said yes, he said no. But what's made the Cowboys' passing game legendary as a unit, Staubach wasn't the only one with that gene. Drew Pearson had it too. Landry caught the shotgun like he had did all evening, and the first player Staubach looked for was his young legendary receiver on the sidelines. If you notice, Pearson was double teamed, just like he had been for the majority of the afternoon. Yet Staubach said, "I'll live by my guy or I'll lose by him." What I loved about Landry, he never gave up on his creations. When he first created the flex back in '64, people thought he was crazy, but he kept with it. When he developed his version of the multiple set offense, they thought it was a waste of time, but he kept with it. And when the shotgun failed him almost this entire game, except on some critical passes, he stayed the course and kept Staubach in the shotgun almost the entire drive. Staubach made some nail biters on critical downs. On third down, he hit Richards on a scramble, but it was a play on fourth down that oftentimes goes unnoticed. It's 4th and 17, which is an amazing miracle play of its own. How many teams have you seen convert on 4th and 17 against one of the best defenses in the league? Better yet, in the postseason, a defense that was conceptually built to stop deep passes. I'm certain at this point, everyone thought that the game was over. No way was he going to convert this. Remember early in the game, they couldn't convert on 4th and inches. How was it now that they were going to do it on 4th and 17? But again, when you have two maniacs on the field who never accept a defeat, miracles do happen.
Roger going down here to Pearson.
That was an amazing throw and an even better catch. To have the sense of throwing the ball towards the sidelines to stop the clock, and for Pearson to catch the ball with his toes on the sidelines and control it all the way through, was one of the greatest acts that I have ever seen in all of my years watching sports. With 32 seconds left, Staubach went for his clutch receiver again. He didn't care if he was double covered this time. If that last Drew Pearson catch opened up the heavens, at this point, why not ask for the floodgates?
He is going to Drew Pearson.
This is perhaps one of the most iconic frames in sports history. The Hail Mary play that helped catapult the Cowboys into NFL lore as America's team.
Set. He got it. Touchdown.
The barbaric Cowboys beat the Vikings of the North in an instant classic that went down to a prayer and a throw. Dallas went on to lose the Super Bowl to the rival Pittsburgh Steelers that season. The shotgun changed the league. By the 80s, the shotgun was a part of every team's offensive formation. It became a staple in the National Football League. The Dirty Dozen were transcendent talents who changed the league. Hollywood Henderson, Randy White were forerunners of modern-day players. Linebackers like Brunick helped solidify the Cowboys' defense for the rest of the decade. Physical wonders like Too Tall Jones and Harvey Martin set the tone of a legendary front four that would dominate for years to come. And Preston Pearson defined the third down halfback receiver and was the first great back from the shotgun formation in history. But none of this matters if Landry didn't say no to defeat. We can learn a lot from Landry and that Cowboys 1975 team, that when prayers go up, blessings do come down. Until next time, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And as always, thanks for watching.